Hello people, welcome to another edition of Dose of Drew, and it is Friday Night Knives. Tonight we are looking at the Flytanium Arcade with a licensed shark lock. Not exactly the same as the AD 20.5, but it is still the same device. We'll get to some of those details in a minute, but first let's just take a moment to appreciate this. I'm not the biggest fan of Ultim, or as one of the folks in the comment section called it, PP Ultim, for exactly that reason. Luckily, it does come with another insert of just black G10, which is fantastic, and I might look at that. There's other ones you can buy like carbon fiber, and if you want different colors, you can get them, which is really nice. I like the black aluminum here, very, very nice. As far as that design. Let's get to some measurements here real quick, because this is a pretty good sized knife. In that, from tip to tail, we are just at a little over 7.5 inches, just a tiny, maybe 7 5/8, 7 3/4 at the most. Blade from tip to scale is 3. We'll go straight across here. 3 and just over a quarter. I'd say 5/16. And along the curve, that is the same length amount of blade, almost the same. It's close enough to the same amount of blade length, even though the scale's a little further back. All right. While we are at it here, let's get a weight. This is solid. I shouldn't say solid. There's, of course, milled for the behind the inserts here. But then the rest is pretty solid right where it's at. Let's get this. So just under 3.5 ounces, about that ounce to inch blade length. The milling in the back gives this a really, really nice balance point right behind the pivot, quite honestly, which is pretty good. All right, little bit more on, oopsie. Sorry for the bump there, folks. A little bit more on this. Let's get some relative size, folks. First, the standard Spyder Co. sandwich here. As you can see, this sits fairly well right in between the two. It similar hand space there to the Paramilitary 2. Similar cutting edge, slightly smaller package in several ways. Similar hand space, if not a little bit more than the Para 3 lightweight and Para 3 by extension, with slightly more blade length. Not bad at all. Real quick while we have it here, just to give you an idea of how slim this thing is too. It is significantly, let's see if is that going to get you the right lighting. Yeah, this thing is significantly slimmer than the Paramilitary 2 with its G10 scales on. So there's that comparison for you. So it is slim, no doubt about it. And of course, it's just a blur. Bring these down here so you can see them. And not just any leak, but a random leak. As you can see, similar overall length to the blur, but with the finger space. Holy grail action there. Almost the same amount of hand space. The link almost comes to it there. With this lobe design, it can almost match, but then it doesn't have the retention level. And while the blur gives it a run for its money and not having a place to really choke up, well, kind of has a little bit more in that category as long as we're going through it. And just to give you a couple more here, some EDC greats. There is the Benchmade Bug Out S30V and the Civivi Elementum. This one's a special edition. The only difference between it is slightly narrower than normal this way in thickness. So yeah, you can see it's got blade of the Benchmade with the hand space of the Civivi, and yeah, that's for two EDC greats like that. That's obviously, I would say, a fairly good combination. And of course, though it is slightly longer than my Wiener, my Wiener is thicker at the tip and just thicker and wider in general. All right, let's get to the damn nice categories: design, aesthetics, mechanics, noteworthy points, intended purpose, cost to value ratio, expectations, and anything if there's a request. Actually, one part of the design here I want to get into is actually a really nice bit of the blade grind here. So just right at the pivot, just under 1/8 of an inch. So my guess is that looks like some grinding and then the coating. There's a fairly tall blade grind on the secondary bevel there, which is a really nice angle. And the reason why it's so tall is because it is, I am right on there, thick behind the edge. 22.5 thousand. So it's thick behind the edge, but then it has a fairly decent blade angle, really taking advantage of all aspects of the S35VN. Let's see if we can get the S35VN blade steel. So grind, high saber, swedge, thick behind the edge, but with a long, fairly acute secondary bevel that gives it really good slicing characteristics while maintaining some of that toughness. And now I do not have an AD 20.5. I have many times thought about getting one, but I really don't like the extra finger swells that are on it. This knife really takes advantage of that. It's a much more open handle design. Doesn't lock your hand so much into a particular grip. Lots of space to choke up. Very similar to a drop point 80-20.5 in overall dimensions. So a lot of the feel is similar in all the good ways, right? You have a good space to choke up here in a pinch grip. Perfect thumb placement. The shark lock is, not only is it not in the way, in my hands, it fits almost perfectly to help lock in the grip, and you can get it right up on the thumb studs and have lots of control. Perfect with the 3-finger choke up, overhand where you just have the thumb on, coming back where you reach all the way out. For my particular hand size, that is almost the perfect length. Longer fingers, it still works really good, but mine hits right on the last little flat spot in front of the jimping there, giving me lots of control while a nice smooth rounded surface. Hard to complain with that. Narrow shark lock looks really good. Narrow aluminum handles, strong, deep carry clip. It's reversible, but it's not drilled. You would have to get like a left-handed insert there. It's just not drilled for it. There's a hole there to put that the screw can go through, but it's not drilled for it. So you would probably have to buy some aftermarket left-handed scales. But otherwise, the clip is reversible by structure. It's just going to take a little bit of work. Everything else is absolutely ambidextrous on this knife. Each side is essentially, if you took off the Ultem and the clip, each side of this knife is the same. So that's really the only difference on that. And the ergonomics and the saber grip with the shark lock as a thumb ramp is just absolutely great. You can even choke back if you have to, if you need a little bit more length or while having a control. And that little pintail in the back there just tucks right in nice. And actually, even though you could engage the shark lock, it provides a nice little platform just in front of it for your finger to maintain that kind of control in anything that would be like a scoring position or a thicker amount of material that you would need to cut through while still maintaining that type of tip control. Very, very good in the design. And the aesthetics of this thing is really hard to complain about. It looks knifey. It looks like a tool. It doesn't look overly aggressive. I actually like that subdued look. I like the fact that the pocket clip matches, and if I wear it on something like jeans or other dark clothes, the black clip at least doesn't shine. Here's the thing I don't like. I don't mind the silver clip so much, but I don't have any silver pants. You know what I mean? Like, none of my pants are silver. So that's my worst problem with, I have a few gray things, but like just shiny silver pants, it shows up too much. I understand how easy it is to put that finish on, but I'm a fan of colored clips, so I can at least try and make it match my outfit instead of just look gaudy on my outfit. So believe it or not, I actually care about the fashion of the knife I might be wearing, because I want it to essentially blend in if I can. So while I don't wear nothing but black, I do wear dark blues, as well as other colors that are dark, that this, like dark grays and stuff, that the black can match quite often. So it goes with about half of my outfits. But I only wear the jeans mostly in the winter, so this is really about as heavy as I can carry in, like, say, my black summer shorts. It's really about really tipping the scales there for me. That's not everybody, and if you don't have that same problem, you can ignore all of that, because 3.5 ounces in jeans is not that heavy. I don't know if I'd call it lightweight. I'd call it right there in the the middleweight category, where you can kind of, it's just at the top of the shorts category as far as I'm concerned for heavy, for weight. But it's also something that just is light in something like jeans. So it does go very well. The middleweight category is not a bad place to be. Mechanics on the Shark Lock. Absolutely flawless type action for me on this one. Very linear and controllable. Very impressed with it. I have not had a chance to do much on the AD 20.5. Here's the one complaint I have on it as far as the mechanics goes. The AD 20.5 has, let's see if I can get, it has a notch right there. Right? This is one of those few times where I really wish I had a lighter color background. But it has a notch right in front of the Shark Lock. That is actually something that would be very welcome on here, because without it, believe it or not, that little notch gives you a significantly, almost doubles the amount of surface area that you engage the Shark Lock with your finger. And if there is one problem I have with the Flytanium version, is that it doesn't have that, and so there's very small amounts of jimping and contact area, which does start to wear on the finger after a little bit. It's not a lot. This isn't a whine. It's more like a comparison. That little tiny notch, which, to be honest, there's no reason that you couldn't do even something like a wedge instead of like a whole cutout right over the stop pin and into there. There's no reason you couldn't take that out on the aluminum and the liners. It's a superlative piece. So it would be removable, and it alters. I would imagine it would alter the character of that Shark Lock on the finger quite a bit. Just a little bit, since surface area is a squared quantity. A little bit more goes a long way. 50% more is 2.5 times more area, right? 50% longer in one dimension, it will be 2.5 times that. It's a squared quantity. So anyway, but yeah, or 2.25. But we'll just there's quite a bit. It's a little over 2. But so yeah, that's probably the single biggest thing I would say on the mechanics, is without that notch that I have seen, and I have often, strangely enough, I've often wondered why it was notched when I looked at the Demko models. Now having the Flytanium without it, I know why it's not. That's probably the single biggest complaint with the Shark Lock, is that it doesn't have that notch, which it could. There's the stop pin up in front. There's the, right? Stop pin up in front. You could definitely notch that and get a fair amount of, without even having to jimp it more, but just get a fair amount more surface area to engage your finger with, which would be much more comfortable, because this thing is ridiculously fidgety. The action is almost perfect. It is, let's see if I can do this again. Just get it going just a little bit, yeah. And then you just pull back a little bit more, and it goes a little bit more, and then it closes. Incredibly linear, controllable, while being silky smooth the whole way. It's really hard to fault this thing as far as the rest of the action. Like I might be being a little nitpicky when I'm complaining about knopping a little bit with the bearings and the smoothness of the Shark Lock design. It's pretty good. And really noteworthy points here. The Shark Lock in a non-Demko knife. And while Demko knives are definitely overbuilt, and hey, look, my current Demko design I own is the Ultimate Hunter. right? And I absolutely love this knife. I think this is a fantastic heavy use S35VN, big honking blade. I don't know if you can see, I have resharpened it to something that's, let's see if I can get that there, to something that's, well, a slightly thicker blade, probably a similar blade secondary bevel angle to what is on the Flytanium. S35VN from Cold Steel in this particular case. My understanding is that the Taiwan factory that makes those and the Demkos is also the same one that makes these. And in that, just to get a little bit on there, another noteworthy point, fit and finish. These little old Tim things fit perfectly. I haven't tried the G10 yet. Haven't pulled this apart to clean it or anything and see how that works yet. Have given it a fair test on some cardboard, some paper. This thing is, let's see if I can't, just to give you all the way out to the tip. Right, it shaves. It's smooth. Oh, let's see if I can get the tip in there. That's not the knife, that's my hands shaking, folks. Anyway, yeah, right, very smooth, very sharp, very well apexed. Very well apexed with a fairly shallow secondary bevel, but a thick behind the edge, giving it a lot of edge stability with S35VN. If it's made in the same place as the Demko and the Cold Steel, they have fantastic heat treats. They know how to heat treat S35VN. One of my favorite S35VN heat treats is that Ultimate Hunter that I just had on screen. Very, very well done. I think it's at like 61 or so on the Rockwell. I believe Cold Steel goes for between 60 and 62 on their S35VN, and most of the ones that I've seen where they measure it, it's a little over 61. So they aim for the higher end of that. My guess is they aim for the higher end of that. That's around the 61 to 62, which is a fantastic area to push S35VN to. Even if it's down in that 60 to 61, it's still a very, very good performer. Again, one of the best things we live living today as a knife person is that we can get S35VN on any in Magna Cut, S45VN. These are super steels that people only dreamed of 10, 15, literally only dreamed up 10, 15, 20 years ago. And they're everywhere now, and you can buy blades. They're not just on the customs. It's everywhere. You can get D2 and 9CR18. You can get all these steels that were made before are now budget. It's a great time to live when you can get it for the price of this. Because the intended purpose is to be not only a great EDC knife, but I honestly believe a way to bring the shark lock to more people, which I don't think is a bad thing. I don't say that as a bad way. If they didn't mean to do it, I think it's going to do it as a side effect of just being on such a good knife that is has appeal to a few more people, I would say. The cost to value ratio isn't bad. I believe this is in the $150 to $160 range. I don't happen to have the invoice right here, but it's right in the thick of it. It may even go up to 200. But yeah, there's configurations, colors. You can get different insets and all that stuff. The cost to value ratio is somewhere at the top of the diminishing returns. The single thing that gives it the biggest way to break, say you do it, is it is an exclusive. This is the only place you can get a shark lock outside of a Demko knife right now. And it's a great thing. It is so fidgety while being so linear and smooth and controllable. It is absolutely just a great way to open and close a knife. You can do it without, safety. If you want to do it slower, you can definitely do it and keep your fingers in the way. It's just so much easier to not. But the single biggest thing on this one, expectations on this, I expected this to be good. I actually expected it to be great. I had seen a couple of reviews to some of the reviewers who always get it first. They're awesome, but kind of, hey. So I expected it to be really good, and it is. It's great. This is up there with the Ritter Hogue when it comes to just really good edge, really good action, and dollar to value ratio. It's good. The aluminum handle is not for everyone, but it is an extremely durable handle. It has really good matte anodization on it. And then you have the inserts back here that have a wonderful level of milling in order to give it just enough grip in different directions. It's just enough that it's not going to tear up your pocket, but it's still going to hold on to it. And that's a pretty cool thing. It holds on to thin nylon shorts very well. And I say nylon where I have different, summer shorts kind of thing that have varying nylon thickness, and I've worn this with a couple of them, and it's been able to stay in the pocket all day with a couple of times coming out for use and all that sort of stuff, and have absolutely no effect on what's a relatively soft fabric. So it does everything on that very well while providing it's not inexpensive, but the knife isn't cheap either. It's definitely a good value. For those who, it's got to be Magna Cut or it's got to be anything. S35VN, when heat treated right in that 60 to 62 range, but right around 61, is one of the best knife steels out there, depending upon how you do it. It's not a Magna Cut or a Vanex, I'm not going to lie. It's not even an S45VN, but it has a little bit more toughness and a better ease of sharpening than S45VN. If you have diamonds, it doesn't matter. S45VN has a little bit better higher strength, and it has a little bit better corrosion resistance. But S35VN is significantly more popular and is already out there on a lot of knives. And the degrees of difference are minor when compared to other steels. It's only when compared to each other that the differences matter. When compared to other steels, it's like, oh yeah, it's okay. So yeah, so S45VN might be number 2 and S35VN is number 3, right? It's only when compared to each other that it matters. To a lot of other steels, it's not. I still have a fondness for S30V, and it's just slightly more noticeable edge retention. I have not been able to tell the difference between S30V and S45VN, but I'm getting off topic. Again, it's great. Good steel choice, good blade shape, great grind, decent thickness without being too thick on the blade steel, and a way to and a geometry that really takes advantage of the steel that it's made out of to maximize what it's going to be. My guess is that's a 17 degree per side bevel. It's pretty even on both sides, extremely well apexed, and then it goes to a thick behind the edge. So you have this long secondary bevel that really takes advantage of the toughness and strength of S35VN. Very well done on that. Only request I have is to notch that or otherwise round that out with like a circle or something so that you can get your finger in there better and get a little bit more surface area, so that as you just take advantage of how stinking fidgety this thing is, it doesn't tear up your finger. Because that's maybe it's a good way to keep you from doing it too much, right? And just sitting there and giggling like a little kid while you sit there and just flick it, because this thing is, let's see if I can do it on camera. Right? It's flickable like a Benchmade, but it's just a matter of, if you don't push back, it stops the blade perfect, and then you just engage it. It is so linear, controllable, and safe while being ridiculously fidgety, and an incredibly strong lock. Like that piece of steel and the liners have a shear strength that's going to be pretty solid. So yeah, that's not going anywhere. Really strong. Well done. Only request is that I'm going to give this a 94 out of 100 on EDC level. It hits so many boxes. It's the right size. It's the right weight. It's the right materials. It's executed so well. The design is, a lot of people might call it generic, but it's classic in the same way that it's a classic. but it also manages to be extremely ergonomic, has a wonderful, unique design like the shark lock that is just so well done. The aesthetics being classic like that, I think is really good. Mechanics are pretty much, I don't want to say flawless, but it's, again, the mechanics are hard to fault. There's really, it's going to be a personal preference. If you don't like it, if you want it to just fall every time, it doesn't do that. You can, if you just hold it back, it'll fall back. But if you can stop the fall of that blade at any point during it with just pressure. So it's ridiculously controllable, smooth, and linear as it goes down. It's the same amount of pressure to get it to fall the same amount every time. Incredibly cool. So the mechanics really are, the fault would be subjective. On a objective mechanical level, this thing works just about perfectly for a pocket knife. And that's the noteworthy points. The shark lock, I'm going to tell you the noteworthy points that surprise me are just how perfect the action is to my tastes. And the intended purpose of an all-around EDC knife that can be used hard but can also do all the other things. You know, it is indeed a package piercer, a saran wrap slicer, or shrink wrap slicer, if you will, for the bubble wrap or anything like that, cardboard carver, and an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. The backwards grip to get to like an envelope is almost just as perfect as a ham-handed on the front, while you have the ramps make great control points. So it actually does that extraordinarily well in lots of different grips. It is an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. So EDC, intended purpose, for it can do hard use stuff, has enough edge retention to compete to probably outshine D2 in this configuration, as well as stain resistance and sharpness, can take wicked sharp edges that last a long time. Cost to value, it's not cheap and it's not inexpensive. It's right in that 70 to 80 range, but with everything else you're getting, it's not really down there. The cost is high, but so is the value. So it keeps that up there. And the expectations were for goodness, maybe some greatness, and it really just shined through us. This is a great EDC knife. Even the lanyard hole is really just, I'm sure there'll be aftermarket Ultem or other inserts, hopefully something besides the PP Ultem, that just fill that whole space. And if you don't want a lanyard, you'll be able to buy secondary market stuff that just fill in that whole space. That's literally all it will take for that to be covered and not be an issue. You want to get carbon fiber that covers that, it'll be fine. It's strong enough. There's just, the structure just doesn't support it. So I'm sure there's some of those things that'll be coming out. In the meantime, wow. Only request again to notch that right there in the front. Right there in front of that shark lock. From the blade to the shark lock, just roll it up there so that the finger gets either a ramp or far more, at the very least a ramp, preferably far more surface area contact. And that's the review tonight, guys. This thing is up there right around that 94 to 95. I actually love the purple thumb stud on this particular one. I'm so glad they put it on there. It's a great little accent color. Everything else being really nondescript black that goes with a lot of dark colors. Again, we'll see what other pocket clips we might be able to get. Flytanium, I am not worried about them having a ridiculous amount of customization. After all, that's generally what they are known for. Not that I'm going to say I don't know them, but those are Flytanium scales right there. So there's always that. Let's see, I know I have another one around. Oh yeah, there it is. The Benchmade. Those are Flytanium scales just to have fair bits. I have had lots of good experience with Flytanium aftermarket products. So I expect that there'll be some really high quality aftermarket stuff available for this, which is a whole nother thing. Flytanium supporting their own product is going to be a win-win for them and the consumer. They'll be able to supply it to exacting standards, and they already have the network and everything available to do a whole bunch of aftermarket stuff or customizations. So win-win for everybody. Absolutely great knife. So it scores really high. And with that, I'm going to end the video, you guys. Go ahead, take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like. Be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your Dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and you guys have a great rest of your night.